Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel. I am Nick from Australia. Tonight's video is going to be the West Tigers Team of the Decade from 2010 to 2020. Also, as soon as this video was uploaded, I will be doing the Newcastle Knights Team of the Decade straight away. So there'll be the West Tigers Team of the Decade, which should be up by 8 o'clock, and the Newcastle Knights one should be up by about 8:20. So stay tuned for that. We're going to have back-to-back videos tonight, so I hope you guys enjoy it. And also, the Penrith Panthers Team of the Decade will also be probably tomorrow afternoon, so I believe that's the last team I have to do for the Team of the Decades, and then they'll all be completed. So, let's get into tonight's West Tigers Team of the Decade from 2010 to 2020. A pretty disappointing decade for the West Tigers. Only 2 finals appearances since 2010, and that was in 2010 and 2011, so pretty disappointing decade for the West Tigers. So let's go through the 1 to 17 along with the coach, and we'll go through it. So fullback James Tedesco, on the wings David Nofoaluma and Pat Richards. In the centres, 2 wingers Marika Koroibete and Lote Tuqiri. In the halves, Benji Marshall and Tim Moulton. The front row of Keith Galloway and Bryce Gibbs. The hooker is Robbie Farah. The back row of Gareth Ellis and Chris Lawrence. The lock is Liam Fulton. And on the interchange bench, it is Chris Hyington, Aaron Woods, Ben Murdoch-Masila, and Curtis Sheridan. The coach of the decade for the West Tigers is Tim Sheens. Now, I know I've got a few players here in different positions and all over the shop here, but you know, I was doing a bit of research looking at some of the West Tigers centres in the decade, and you know, halfbacks and all that. They didn't have many good options, so I got a few players in different positions, which I think makes the team look a lot better in my opinion. So obviously the fullback, I've got James Tedesco, and you know, when he was at the West Tigers, he was a really good player. The Tigers haven't had many great fullbacks over the last decade, so you know, I think Tedesco probably makes the fullback for the West Tigers there. I thought he played all right at the West Tigers. He was a really good player coming through, and one that the Tigers will definitely regret letting go. So I think Tedesco at fullback here is a no-brainer. The wingers, David Nofoaluma and Pat Richards. Now, David Nofoaluma still plays for the West Tigers to this day, and he's been a great player for the West Tigers, and I think he'll go down as a one-club player for the Tigers, and everything he does on the field is very good, and I think he'll play State of Origin in the near future, but he's been good at the West Tigers in this last decade, or however long he's been there, or whatever, but Nofoaluma, what a great player he is, and he's a no-brainer here for mine. The other winger is Pat Richards, one of the best West Tigers wingers that the West Tigers have had in their history. He's been fantastic. His goal kicking is great. His kickoffs were an absolute nightmare. He was a great player for the West Tigers, and I think he deserves to be in this team somewhere. So I've got Pat Richards on the wing. In the centres, Marika Koroibete and Lote Tuqiri. Now, Marika Koroibete played with the Tigers for about 2 or 3 years, and he was a really good player for the Tigers, a very fast player. He had a lot of speed, and he had a lot of good attributes about his game, Marika Koroibete, so I've got him in the centres for the West Tigers. The other centre I got, with more of a winger anyway, is Lote Tuqiri. Now, he came back for the West Tigers when he was playing rugby union. He came back for the Tigers, played there for about 3 or 4 years, and did a pretty good job for the West Tigers. I thought when he came back, the Tigers were they were competing for the premiership. Obviously didn't win it, but they were thereabouts and they were doing well. But Lote Tuqiri's run at the Tigers was quite good, and I think he deserves to be in this team of the decade somewhere. So I've got Lote Tuqiri in the centres. In the halves, Benji Marshall and Tim Moulton. Now, I know Tim Moulton was more of a fullback / 5'8", but, you know, Benji Marshall was a no-brainer for mine. Probably the best West Tigers half to ever play for him. But you know, I think Tim Moulton deserves to be in this team somewhere. He was really good at the West Tigers, you know. Whether he was playing fullback or 5'8", he was always doing a good job for him, Tim Moulton. So I got Moulton and Benji in the halves. Benji Marshall pretty much picks himself. He's probably one of the first blokes picked in this team of the decade for the Tigers. So I've got Moulton and Benji in the halves. The front row of Keith Galloway and Bryce Gibbs. Now, big Keithy Galloway. We all know how good of a player he was. I was a big fan of Keith Galloway. You know, he was a fantastic player. He was always a good front rower, always did the hard yards, and always did a good job for his teammates and the club. So Keith Galloway for mine is a no-brainer. Along with the other front rower, Bryce Gibbs. He was a very good player, Bryce Gibbs. Very tough, very physical, always did a job. A very hard player, Bryce Gibbs, and he was a very good front row, and I think he is a no-brainer for this team of the decade for the Tigers. The hooker, probably the first bloke picked along with Benji Marshall, Robbie Farah, a great captain of the West Tigers, one of the best West Tigers players in their history. Definitely their best hookers for the Tigers. I don't think they have even replaced with Robbie Farah, to be honest. I know Harry Grant was good last year, but that was only one year. But Robbie Farah, man, what a player he was for the West Tigers. Arguably the West Tigers' best ever player. What a player he was, and a great hooker for the Tigers. The back row of Gareth Ellis and Chris Lawrence. Now, Gareth Ellis, he was a really strong player, Gareth Ellis. Only retired about 2 years ago or so over in the Super League. Now, Gareth Ellis, a very creative back rower. He had a lot of skill about him, offloads and attacking flair was fantastic. And Gareth Ellis was a really good player for mine, so he makes the back row along with Chris Lawrence. Now, Chris Lawrence is probably known for more of the centre position for the Tigers, and I've got him in the back row. I could easily have him in the centres, but Chris Lawrence, man, a really good player for the Tigers, whether he's playing centre or back row. He was always playing good for the Tigers, and I think Chris Lawrence deserves to be here somewhere, so I've got him in the back row. The lock is Liam Fulton, can't even pronounce that last name, but Liam Fulton was a really good player, man. Always did a good job for the Tigers. His run meters were really strong, and I reckon he was a pretty underrated player, Liam Fulton, so I've got him at lock for the Tigers. On the bench, Chris Hyington obviously won a premiership for the Tigers in 2005, which is something that I would like to forget, as you can see in the background. Obviously, I'm a Cowboys fan, and 2005 just brings back dark memories for me, but Chris Hyington was a very good player for the West Tigers, always did a job for them. Obviously, ended up at Cronulla late in his career and Newcastle, but at the West Tigers, Chris Hyington was a very strong player, and I think he deserves to be in this team somewhere. Also, Aaron Woods on the bench. I think Aaron Woods probably makes a bench for the Tigers. I think he was a pretty good front row for the Tigers. When he was playing State of Origin football and playing for Australia, Aaron Woods was at the West Tigers at the time, and I think Aaron Woods will be known as probably a better West Tigers forward than he was at Canterbury and Cronulla. But Aaron Woods, man, a pretty solid player, and I've got him on the bench, along with another forward, Ben Murdoch-Masila. Now, a lot of people forget that he played for the West Tigers, but when he was there, he was a really strong player. He could play back row, bit of lock, would come off the bench. Ben Murdoch-Masila, a lot of people just call him a Super League flop, but he was really good at the West Tigers. But, he went over to Warrington for a couple of years, and now he's back at the New Zealand Warriors. So, everyone forgets about his time at the West Tigers, and he was a very strong player, Ben Murdoch-Masila. So, I think he deserves to make this team, so I've got him on the bench. And the other forward I've got is Curtis Sheridan. Obviously, he plays for the Manly Seagulls now, but his time at the West Tigers was quite good. Curtis Sheridan was very good at the Tigers. He was coming through there as a junior, but as a bit of a 5'8", bit of a back rower, centre. No one really knew where to play Curtis Sheridan, but at the Tigers, he was a very solid player, and I think he deserves to make the team somewhere, so I've got him on the bench, along with the coach, Tim Sheens. Now, the reason why I've got Tim Sheens as the coach is because he's the only coach the last decade that has actually got the West Tigers to the finals. Now, they haven't had many good coaches since Tim Sheens, the West Tigers. Obviously, they had, what's that bloke's name? Can't think of his friggin' name on the top of my head, but, what's his name? If I can think of it. No, I've gone blank. But anyway, I think it was coaching the Roosters for a while. Jason Taylor. Jason Taylor was the one I was meant to say. Jason Taylor, he did a terrible job at the West Tigers. He didn't do a good job at all there. And then you had Michael Maguire come in, and he's done an okay job, but 0 finals appearances, but he's still trying to rebuild that club. But I think Tim Sheens is probably the best coach the Tigers have had the last decade. But, not a great decade for the West Tigers, and I don't know how they'll go from 2020 to 2030, but we'll see how they go. But definitely not a good decade for the West Tigers. But anyway, guys, That's my West Tigers Team of the Decade video. Let me know in the comment section below what your West Tigers Team of the Decade is. I would like to know in the comment section below. But anyway, guys, that's going to wrap up this video. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you guys go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you're not following me on Instagram, make sure you do. I'll leave a link in the description below. So go and follow me on Instagram. It's just called Nick from Australia. It's pretty simple. And also, if you want to donate to the channel, feel free to do so. There's a link in the description below for that via PayPal. Anyway, guys, I'm getting out of here. I'll see you guys again in about half an hour time for the Newcastle Knights Team of the Decade. Alright, guys, I'll see you guys then.